Well, now another talk with a contender for one of those positions as being an MLC. Marlene Hendy joins us now. Marlene, again, a lot of people coming forward who don't seem to have any political experience, so I think we should go straight on that level. What made you want to stand as an MLC?
Right. Well, I've had a professional experience in private practice, and then I moved into public service as conservation officer, which I held that post for, I think, 9 years. And from there, I moved on to working in local authority in Ramsey Town Commissioners. And I've had what I felt was a calling to move in more a political role for quite some time. But the time has not been right for me, either in life or in work. But now I think I've got to the stage where it is right for me, and I've still got an awful lot to give. And I thought, well, if there's something that you really feel you want to do, you must do it. And I thought, yes, I've got a lot to give. And it's great that there are so many candidates coming forward, especially ladies as well.
OK, but why not go for the MHK route if you want to go into politics? I mean, that is voted by the public. You know, that is the cut and thrust of politics on the Isle of Man. It seems as, for some people, maybe the easy option to go for the MLC route, if that's your thing, to get to politics.
Yes, I can understand that question. I did consider at the last general election, was that the right time for me to stand? At that time, I'd already worked in the commission with Alex Allenson and Laurie Hooper. I knew they were really good potential MHKs. And if I had at that time decided to stand, all it might have done would be to split the vote and make it more difficult for two really good candidates that I felt were worthy candidates at that time. And I think their work to date is proving that my instincts were right. If I'm not successful at this attempt at LegCo, then who knows? But LegCo, I think one of the advantages of LegCo is that you have an opportunity to make objective and constructive decisions without having to think and look at the next election. And I, in my work experience, have known MHK shy away from making brave decisions with an eye on the next election. Whereas LegCo, it's that secondary backstop almost and a scrutinising layer of government. And I think with my experience, I've got a lot to bring to LegCo.
Yes, I mean,
so
your background.
Now.
Sorry, your background. You've worked in government circles, you know, as such. Yes, so this is what will give you this helpful, insight into how everything works.
Well, when I was conservation officer, I drafted the conservation policy for the Isle of Man. I designed the grant schemes for both registered buildings and conservation areas. And until they were in place, it was very difficult for people with these important historic buildings to really get any assistance at all to maintain their properties, not just for now, but into the future. And so I'm used to interpreting primary and secondary legislation and for designing some of it on a secondary level, and then working in local government in housing and capital projects coming forward. I also had experience with other branches of legislation, and particularly with housing legislation for people in housing need, housing for the elderly, sheltered housing. So my breadth of experience is quite wide, really. And again, I think I've got a lot to bring and to contribute and across the board.
Do you see this as a full-time position then? I mean, or would you be doing other things at the same time?
Oh, undoubtedly. I have no impression that this is not a full-time post and more. I've seen the work that goes on, and I know sometimes you hear comments from the wider public that MHKs and members of the legislature, they don't seem to do anything, whereas I know the work that goes on, the gargantuan task that the politicians have in ploughing through reams of paper, understanding, interpreting, and taking forward the right legislation for our island community.
And how much interest have you taken in, like, going to Tynwald? Have you seen it in action? Do you know the running of the procedures and that sort of thing? Have you been there?
Well, I have, and I've not been recently, but I've been and viewed the goings on of day to day legislature, both the Keys and Tynwald, and indeed I've been when my own drafted policy and legislation goes forward. I've been to view that being considered and laid before Tynwald.
And would you see yourself as putting forward some future proposals of change of law or new laws, or do you see yourself as just revising what the MHKs are doing?
I think if I was successful, we all have to start somewhere, and I usually take a watching brief. I don't plough in to start with. There's an awful lot to learn, really, in terms of the workings of LegCo and Tynwald and the Keys, and I would bow to the knowledge of those that are already established. But if there was what I perceived to be a gap in legislation, and I felt I could actively make constructive improvements, then guided by those who know the way through, I wouldn't be afraid of coming forward with proposals and bills of my own.
And
not at all. I wouldn't be.
What's the future for LegCo? Do you see it continuing its form, or do you see more further loss of power or changing of the way it's constructed?
Well, there's a wide view on this. The Lisbane report was quite interesting in that there were recommendations that. One interesting recommendation was that sitting members of the House of Keys could not be elevated to LegCo, but it was quite refreshing that the House has voted in an open vote instead of a secret ballot. I think that's what's encouraged such a high level of interest in these elections, because hopefully we're not going to be going round in circles for weeks and weeks trying to get a result. I think that the secondary and scrutinising role of LegCo is still very important, and that is their role. The MHKs have a heavy workload dealing with their day-to-day constituency matters. LegCo members can also advocate on behalf of people with certain specific needs, and I would be open to that as well. But I still think there is a role for LegCo going into the future. But then that's up for scrutiny too as time goes on. But I think the present House, these members, the new members that have been in for about a year and a half now, I think they have a refreshing approach. They are open to new ideas. I think they're very brave, some of the decisions they're making in these very challenging times. And I'd like to think that with the loss possibly of some experienced members from the existing LegCo, that I would have something to bring by experience and maybe a little bit of wisdom that would make a contribution that I'd be proud to make. And that's why I'm offering myself as a candidate, because I do think I've got a considerable amount of wisdom and experience that could be made use of, and I'd be proud to do so.
Okay, and just to make this clear, you said that if this doesn't happen this time, you still see yourself pursuing some sort of political career in the future?
I wouldn't rule it out. I'm an existing member of the planning committee, which I love. I've been in that role for a year and a half now, and I think I'm making a good contribution and bringing my experience of the planning system and conservation particularly to bear. And if I'm unsuccessful, I'll be happy to continue in my planning committee role, and hopefully my co-committee members feel that I do make a valuable contribution. So I'd be sorry to leave that, but there again, I have an interest in planning, and if I was successful, who knows where I might end up.
I was going to ask you, so if you could pick a department to be on, that sort of thing would interest you from the inside to carry on, rather than anything else particularly you like?
Well, my interest as well through working in local authority housing and sheltered housing, we have this situation where the demographics are moving towards a much higher population of older people. We're all going in that direction, but trying to resolve how we deal with healthcare for not just our older or ageing population, but across the board. That's another big issue, which again affects us all, and it's actually trying to find the correct level of finance to be able to fund a really good health services, which we all deserve, and having paid into your national insurance all your life, you deserve to have a good level of healthcare, and I know that's what our government are seeking to find. So I have many interests, of course, arts and music, and I think the island is very active in going forward with new ideas. We've got our island we've had Island of Culture, and our island, our Year of the Island. I think that's a great initiative, and that's something again that really is trying to invite people in, not just to be bystanders and take part in the wonderful heritage that we have and the landscapes and the arts. Get out there and be part of it. So again, I've got a breadth of interests.
Okay.
And,
finally,
yeah.
I mean, Dr. Alex Allinson has proposed you. You've had no problem getting your 4 names, I understand, presumably. So, have you been pressed in the flesh with other MHKs and working out who's going to vote for you?
Well, I approached Alex. We know one another through the commission and as friends, and Laurie Hooper and Tim Baker, of course, is chairman of planning, and I've worked with Tim, and he's an excellent chair. And then, of course, I'm very honoured to have the Chief Minister as one of my assenters as well. And I'm very heartened that those that I've sought support from have actually agreed. I haven't lobbied other MHKs as yet, although my proposer and my seconders and assenters I know are they're getting good feedback from within the House. So the hustings are on, I think it's the 26th of February. So really, until my nomination had gone in, I thought, well, I'll just make sure that I'm secure in going forward in my nomination. And then, yes, things like doing this interview with you all helps, but I will certainly be letting members have details of my they'll all get my CV and my overview and my reasons for standing.